Hello and welcome back once again to After the Credits. Welcome to the slightly new and improved set. Got some new posters hung up here, and I had to get this done today because the movie we're talking about today is the new central point behind me here, The Dark Tower. Now this is my second attempt at recording this, because earlier when I recorded it, I recorded the whole thing, spent 20 minutes talking about it, and realized I didn't turn on my microphone. So hopefully it's recording me properly now, hopefully I don't have to do this a third time. And hopefully we can get through this before I have to leave for work in a few minutes. So what did I think of The Dark Tower? Again, it's kind of fitting with the theme for this year, or at least for this period of time, where movies are just rather uneventful. I know this has been getting some mixed reviews. Some people have liked it, some people haven't. And I can kind of see why the ones who haven't liked it. And it could be that whole thing about they're trying to cram an entire Stephen King novel into a 2-hour movie where they seem to do better as miniseries. But overall, like through the course of the movie, nothing really happens. And I guess the easiest way to explain what I mean by that is to go through the movie like I usually do. So we start out with some opening text basically telling us that there is this tower that exists for some reason, and it's supposed to bridge between all worlds and all realities or whatever. So it's kind of like the whole tree of life in Norse mythology, where there's like Elfheim and Niflheim and Midgard and all those types of things, where they're all interconnected, the 9 realms, to this one tree. That's kind of what this is, but they kind of break away from that by saying they don't know how many worlds are actually connected to this tower, just that this tower is there. And then the opening text says that the entire tower can be brought down by the mind of a child. Now, when I hear that, I think of something like something so simple a child could figure it out could bring down this whole tower. But in the movie, the bad guys take that quite literally to mean that the mind of the child is what needs to take down this tower. So they create this device that turns a child's mind into a bolt of energy that fires at the tower, takes a chunk out of it, and weakens the barrier, which I'll get into in a second, but they haven't found a powerful enough one to fully take down the tower yet. It seems like it blasts a chunk out of it, and then I don't know if the tower just repairs itself, or it's such a little amount that it doesn't affect it. That was never really made clear in the visualization that they show of this tower being attacked, because it looks like it blows a big section out, and then it just still kind of stands there. Now, about the whole barrier thing that I mentioned, is basically this tower creates a bubble that encompasses the universe, or all the universes, or whatever. And outside of the universe is darkness and monsters. So it's kind of that whole story of, in the beginning there was darkness, and then there was the separation of darkness and light, and there's the whole outer gods, I guess you could say. Kind of I guess similar to the Lovecraftian folklore, with the outer gods being outside the universe and trying to get in. So there's that whole aspect of it too. And every time the tower's attacked, the bubble weakens slightly to where something can kind of get through. But when they get through, they don't really affect anything. They just kind of show up for a brief second, and then that's it. They don't really do anything throughout the movie. So then we cut over to the real world, where we're in New York, modern day, and there's this kid who's having these nightmares, who's been having nightmares for about the last year and a half or so since his father passed away. And these nightmares are of this other world where the man in black is trying to use the mind of children to destroy the tower. So he has these nightmares, he wakes up and he draws them out, writes things down and stuff, and is trying to piece together the story. And of course, his mother thinks, this is a little bit of odd behavior, so she thinks he's having some trauma or, problems dealing with stress based on his father's death, and that's what's causing these nightmares. So she sends him to a shrink and whatnot. Basically the same thing that happens in most of these types of movies. And of course they all think he's just having trouble dealing with the father's death, and let's put him on some drugs or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then he gets into a fight at school. So then you have the stepfather character, or the mom's boyfriend or whatever, who thinks he runs the show and, wants the kid out of the picture so he can have a better shot with the mother. Just that overall douche stereotype of a stepfather. And he wants to send the kid to this, basically a mental hospital upstate that works with kids with his type of condition, and basically just overly medicates them instead of finding out what the actual problem is. And that way the kid will be out of the picture so him and the mom can have their fun time together, whatever. So the mother convinces him that it's not going to be that bad, and he's willing to go. And then he realizes that the people who are running the place are people from his nightmares, because they basically are some type of rat-type creature, that like a humanoid rat, and they wear human skins, so they have seams like down the side of their neck. And he sees a seam like that on this one guy that is working for the doctor that comes to take him to the facility, and he's basically like, no, I know what these guys are. So basically he runs away. He's like, I'm going to run to the bathroom, grab my toothbrush or whatever, crawls out the window, and he's gone. And he makes his way to New York, where he finds out that this house that he saw in his dream is real and exists, and he finds out where it's located, which isn't too far away from him. So he goes to the house, and he's exploring around. Turns out there's just a portal there for anyone who happens to stumble into the house to find. You just walk in, and it's like, please enter destination. Okay. And then there's a giant portal. So he jumps through the portal, and he's in his dream world now. And within a couple minutes of being in his dream world, he meets Idris Elba's character, the gunslinger, who he also dreamed about in his most recent dream. And he just happens to run into this guy at this exact location by going through this portal. Doesn't really make sense. So Idris Elba's character kind of questions like who he is, are you working for the Man in Black, blah, 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 blah. He's like, no, I have these nightmares and I draw what I see and this is what I've been seeing. I'm from a different dimension or universe or whatever. So Idris Elba finally believes him and he's like, okay, well, we need to go see a seer and they'll be able to help you with this dream issue and maybe we can figure out where the Man in Black is so I can finally take him down. So they go to see the seer, and as they're traveling, you start to realize that this might not be a different dimension as much as it's a post-apocalyptic future Earth. And one of the reasons is at one point as they're traveling, they come across an old broken down amusement park, and there's like roller coasters and like tilt-a-whirls and stuff that are just there in shambles. And the kid asks Idris Elba, he's like, you guys had amusement parks here? And Idris Elba says, no, those have existed long before any of us, and no one really knows what their purpose was. And the kid goes, yeah, they were amusement parks. So there's that, and then as they finally make it to the village, there's like this cement structure that looks like it's an old subway entrance, and it still has writing above it that's related to the real world. I forget what exactly it says, but it's similar to something in the New York landscape that the kid passed earlier. So even the kid kind of looks at it like, that's odd. But it's like, okay, so you had amusement parks and this exists here, so is this a post-apocalyptic Earth, or is it just some of our world has bled through into theirs in some way, and they just don't know what any of this stuff is or what it means? So we finally get to the seer, and turns out the kid has The Shining, because it's a Stephen King novel, and everyone has The Shining, right? So basically, The Shining, for those of you who don't know, is this odd psychic ability that some of Stephen King's characters have. I think the girl in It has a form of The Shining. Obviously, there's a movie about The Shining. So it's just like a recurring thing in his movies. Anytime somebody has a mild psychic ability, they call it The Shine or The Shining. So this kid has The Shining, and after 2 minutes of talking to the seer, he now has full control over The Shining, which comes into play heavily later because he starts using it as a weapon against everyone. How he learned to control it so quickly isn't really made clear. It's like, okay, here's a 2-minute conversation with the seer. Oh, you have The Shining. Okay, so I'm a psychic now. Boom, I can control this. So as he's learning how to use his ability in 2 minutes, the Man in Black manages to track them down and takes him prisoner because obviously he has this powerful mind. His mind will finally be the one that takes down the tower. So the gunslinger tries to rescue him, manages to rescue him, gets injured in the process, and they figure the best way to hide from the Man in Black is to go back into the other world. And of course they do, because Idris Elba's injured, and the seer in the village doesn't have the medical experience or, the knowledge of herbs or whatever to stop the infection that's growing through his body because of the injury he sustained. So they go back in the real world, and the kid takes him to the hospital, and he's like, oh, we were at a costume contest, and, there were the 2 gunslingers, and they were having a shootout, whatever, and oops, one of the guns was real and had a real bullet in it. And the doctor's just kind of like, okay, we'll treat him and don't question it at all. And it's like, that's not how the real world works. Even if you accidentally shoot yourself, if you go to the hospital, the police are contacted and come and have to do a full report before they'll let you leave. And these doctors are just like, oh, okay, well, we'll treat you for your gunshot wound and we'll treat you for everything else that's wrong with you too while you're here. And then it turns out, like, they say that he has hepatitis A, B, and I think she said E, which is odd because I've only ever heard of A, B, and C, but she said E, so it's like, how many hepatitis are there that we don't know about? At least that aren't, like, common, I guess. But then she also says he has, like, low-level radiation poisoning. So, again, it kind of lends to the whole idea that it's a post-apocalyptic Earth, in that everyone there probably has low-level radiation poisoning for living in the fallout for however many years, and it just so happens that by our modern technology, it's something they've lived with forever, and it's something that we're able to detect and treat. Again, kind of hinting at the whole post-apocalyptic Earth thing without actually saying it. So then the Man in Black manages to track them back to the real world as well. Manages to capture the boy, so now the gunslinger has to go in and rescue him. Big climactic shootout, bang, bang, bang at the end. Kid is rescued, and now the Man in Black is dead. The gunslinger's like, well, hey, I'm gonna need your help. You have a real powerful gift. Why don't you come with me and help me out? And the boy's like, are you serious? And he goes, well, yeah, you don't have anything left here, so why don't you come with me? And again, this is kind of an odd point the way it came up in the movie, is the reason he doesn't have anything is because the Man in Black at one point while he was trying to track him down went to visit his mother's house and killed the boyfriend, and that's like the only thing that's like, yeah, that's what that asshole gets. And then, he basically tortures the mother to try and get information out of her using his sorcery, because that's the whole point of the Man in Black, is he's a sorcerer. And the whole reason he wants to destroy this universe bubble anyway is to let in the darkness, and he figures that he's powerful enough of a sorcerer that even after these demons have destroyed everything, it'll just be him and the demons left, and he has enough power to control them. So that's his ultimate end game, is it's just going to be him left. But he uses his sorcery to go and torture the mother and basically get information about where her son is, where he went, how he knows all this stuff. And that's kind of like the end of that scene. But then later on, after the hospital scene, when the boy and Idris Elba go back to the boy's apartment to let his mother know that he's okay, we find out that the mother was killed too, and I don't remember seeing that at the time that they were interacting, so it's just kind of like, oh, I left him a surprise at his house, and it's like, what surprise? And then you get there and it's like, oh shit, his mom's dead too. So, he kind of has this whole issue with this guy killed his mother, and he kind of wants revenge, but at the same time, he wants his revenge and not the gunslinger's revenge, because the gunslinger wants revenge too. So it's this whole, I'm not going to justify you by becoming you type of thing. And it's just a really weird dynamic, because the way they go back and forth, it doesn't really balance out, and it doesn't really explain why it's doing what it's doing. So yeah, it's just so much is crammed into here, the dialogue just gets really clumpy and really crappy, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, some of the conversations they have. But anyway, so the gunslinger's like, well, your mom's dead, her boyfriend's dead, so you really don't have anything here now, so why don't you come hang out with me in the other world, and, you'll be a new gunslinger, and I can use your shining gift, and blah, 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 blah. And the kid's like, okay, sure. And then they jump through a portal, and that's the end. So like I said, it's an hour and a half of basically uneventfulness, and I think it just suffers from that whole, there's so much that they're trying to cram into a short time period, and they're chopping out a lot. And there's reasons that doesn't work, and why Stephen King books work better as miniseries versus movies. So based on that, what would I give it as far as a star rating? I'd probably give this one a 2. I almost rated it a 1.5, just because, like I said, it's kind of a non-story. It's like, oh, there's this tower that exists, and this guy needs a kid. Here's a kid in the real world who's having nightmares. Oh, but here's a gunslinger. Dark guy's dead. Come with me if you want to live. And okay, bye. And that's the movie. And it's like, what was the point of that? Are they planning to make more movies out of this, and this is just the opening to introduce everyone? But it doesn't really seem like that, even though I know the Dark Tower was a whole series of books. But it just doesn't really establish that that's what they're trying to do with this. They don't really lead into a sequel at all, except for one little bit after the credits where you hear the Man in Black whistle. It doesn't show him or anything, it's just he does this whistle thing throughout the movie when he's approaching somebody that he's going to kill. And after the credits, you just hear the whistle again. It's like, oh, is he still alive after all? Did he use his magic to make them think he was dead, but he's really not? So, it's sort of sequel baits, but not really, and it doesn't really leave a story open to where there's any place to go with this other than further adventures of the kid and the gunslinger, which, might as well be a TV series at that point. But yeah, so I was going to give it a 1.5 because it's really just a non-story, but at the same time, it was quickly paced for a non-story, and it did have a couple action scenes, although there could have been more for a movie about a gunslinger. If you're going to make a spaghetti western, have it be a spaghetti western, not a non-story. Have it have some gunshot action fights more than what you put into it. You have an hour and a half movie and you did 2 gunfights out of the whole thing, and only one was really extensive. So, yeah, it could have been better, but like I said, it wasn't slow-paced. I think if it was, I would have ranked it a lot lower, but because it was only an hour and a half and moved fairly quickly, it wasn't unwatchable. It just didn't go anywhere. So for that, I'm going to give it a 2. So there you have it. That's my review of The Dark Tower. Second take on it. Hopefully I covered everything that I covered the first time. Might not have been worded as eloquently or with the same delivery, but I tried my best to get all my key points back across that I remember. So hope you enjoyed it. I'll try to remember and make sure the microphone's on going forward now. But that is it for this episode. Again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. The links are down in the description. Click the bell up there in the corner or wherever it is now because I still haven't checked. Make sure you're getting notifications every time I post new content. And until next time, I'll see you after the credits.